Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Deborah Perry Piscione and Josh Drean, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. Where are you joining me from?
I am based in Silicon Valley, and Josh?
The snowy plains of Minnesota. I'm out in Minneapolis area.
Oh, it must be very cold.
It is. We're hitting -16 today. Feels like -29. So
wow.
Looking forward to joining Deborah in Silicon Valley soon.
Yeah, better you than me, Josh.
I'm in the Salt Lake City area. I'm in the Salt Lake City area, and we are in single digits, which, you know, I feel is cold, but at least we're not in the negatives. So, but I do love the Midwest. I'm from Missouri, and we definitely get cold winters there as well, but not quite as bad as Minnesota. Well, it is a true pleasure to be with you both. And today we're going to be talking about your new book, Employment is Dead: How Disruptive Technologies Are Revolutionizing the Way We Work. This book will be released this coming Tuesday. So I'm super excited to have the opportunity to talk with you about the book, get the ins and outs of it, talk about some of the key findings, the key takeaways, and really the audience, you know, the first look here, right here, to learn more about this really cool, groundbreaking book. As we get started, I wanted to share a little bit about both of our authors with you. Deborah Perry Piscione is co-founder of the Work3 Institute, an AI plus Web3 advisory firm, a Silicon Valley serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and innovation plus future of work thought leader. Deborah is the author of multiple books, including the New York Times bestseller Secrets of Silicon Valley, and serves as LinkedIn Learning instructor on innovation and risk-taking. Josh Drean is a co-founder of the Work3 Institute, Web3 plus workforce advisor at the Harvard Innovations Lab, and an HR transformation expert who marries emerging technologies with workplace strategies. Josh's work has been featured in HBR, Forbes, Fast Company, and MIT Technology, and his YouTube channel has garnered millions of views. He earned his undergraduate degree in IO psychology and master's degree at Harvard University. Now, I could say a whole lot more about both of these individuals. Both have tremendous careers, great backgrounds. I'm going to pause there. Deborah and Josh, anything you would like to highlight by way of your background, personal context, before we dive on into the book?
I spent 18 years in Washington, D.C. in that political environment. So it's going to be fun just to see the marriage between tech, Silicon Valley, and Washington, D.C. over the next few years.
All I can say to that is wow. And yes, it'll be interesting to see. That is a good way to put it. Josh, anything you want to add?
I mean, we wrote this book. We came together because Deborah, as she's mentioned, is sitting in Silicon Valley, and I was working out of the Harvard Innovation Labs, working with young students who are interested in these emerging technologies, and just watching them work in these different ecosystems of work and setting them up in ways that we haven't necessarily seen in the corporate model. So I actually applied to Deborah's Web3 conference to speak and share some of my insights. And she just cold called me, gave me a phone call and said, "Hey, this looks like a book. Should we write this together?" And fast forward to today, almost 3 years later, it is hitting the shelves on January 28th. We're really excited about that. The title is Employment is Dead: How Disruptive Technologies are Disrupting the Way We Work, are revolutionizing the way we work. Sorry, we use so many words for this. Disrupting, emerging, revolutionizing, because that's exactly what it is. We declare that employment is dead because these traditional models for employment are not keeping up with the needs of the modern workforce, and emerging technologies are going to prepare the way for them to work in ways that have been previously unimaginable.
Yeah, excellent. Well, first of all, that's a really cool backstory to how you got connected and you know, how this book came to be. And I always like to ask authors, why this book, why now? How did this book come about? You've already kind of answered that question for me. Anything you'd like to add to that, Deborah?
Yeah, I think what's really critical to also share about the collaboration between Josh and myself, I kind of look through the lens of innovation and risk taking from Secrets of Silicon Valley. I ended up working with one of the big consulting firms and IDEO just on the development of a bottoms-up innovation process. Josh has the lens through the HR component. I think even though the tech drives a lot of evolution and transformation, at the end of the day, this is really a conversation about people and making sure that there's a human element to work. And so it's really important just to kind of look at the span, not only of technological advancement, but different generations in the workforce. I happen to be Gen X, Josh is a millennial, we have Gen Z kids. We've got kind of this span of how work has evolved as various generations see things quite differently. But I do have to say, even though I'm a Gen Xer, I think I very much always had that Gen Z mindset because I never understood the concept of time at work. So if I finished my day at 2 p.m., why did I have to sit in my Washington, D.C. office until
Sure.
6
Yeah.
p.m. with FaceTime? And so this is really a new transformation that's about output and productivity and less about FaceTime.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I agree. So I'm a Zennial. I'm a 79 birth year, which, has been coined the Zennial in between. So I
Oh,
kind of relate both to Gen
yeah.
X and to millennials. I probably more millennial in me than not, but I completely agree. Like the whole FaceTime thing, butts and seats thing, I've never understood that. Like I that
Yeah.
doesn't resonate with me at all, never has. And I really like I was intrigued when we first set this interview up. It's been a little while ago that we set this up, and I've been looking forward to the interview. And I was intrigued by the title. And when I first, I think I talked to your publicist, and I'm looking over kind of the background to the book and a description of it and everything like that. And I'm thinking employment is dead. Now, as an HR professor myself, and I do a lot of research in the space myself, I've been seeing this and I do a lot of research on kind of the history of the shifting nature of work over the past 50 years and a little bit of kind of transition into the future of work. And you're right. Like the traditional kind of way we think about work is dead. Like it is not, our grandparents' workplace. And anyone who tries to argue that it is kind of up in the night, I think. Like it just isn't what it used to be.
Right.
And we still work. Of course, we still work, and we still have people doing jobs, but those jobs are different, and the way we do work is different, and the relationships we have between organizations and their workers is different. It's all very different, and it's going to continue to change dramatically as we move into the future. We've seen that trajectory shift, in tremendous ways over the last couple of decades, and particularly over the last 5 years. And so I'm just so intrigued by what you're laying out in this book and the case studies that are helping to illustrate it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Josh and I get this question a lot. What do you mean by employment is dead? And we're not saying that traditional employment is going away tomorrow. What we're saying is there's this bifurcated work track that has already evolved,
Yeah.
and Gen Z has already adopted it. So this is the first generation coming into the workforce that really knows the future of work better than the current leadership does. And so obviously the media is giving enormous attention to Gen AI and how it's going to impact jobs and the labor market overall. But what we're also talking about is Web3 technologies like the blockchain, like the metaverse, digital twinning, how it will continue to evolve to make work more efficient, make us more product, certainly more productive,
Mhm.
and figure out how we redefine time and how we utilize time. And for so long we've been crying that we want the European lifestyle that you can take off August. Well, we're now at the stage as AI gets more and more adopted across the enterprise that we can actually imagine embracing life stage flexibility. Meaning, if you want to work 5 days a week, you can have a shorter work day. If you've just had a first child, maybe you only want to work 2 days a week. But Josh, you're the real expert on the Web3 side. Perhaps, you want to weigh in just more on how these other technologies are also taking shape.
Yeah, and I really like what you were saying earlier, John, right? That there are emerging preferences for work. There's a different way of looking at work. You and I were raised in it at a time where feedback was immediate through social media. And
Yeah.
so when you talk to HR about this concept of employee engagement surveys, it has fallen out of date very quickly, especially when you look
Mhm.
at, the environment and the culture of the organization. Are we creating um, trust within the organization? So Deborah and I have come up with the 10 operating principles of Work3, what we're calling Work3. These are the non-negotiables of the modern workforce. And, I work with HR leaders all over the world, and I simply ask them, can you offer any of these to your people? If the answer is no, then I would ask the question, why should they work for you? And
Right.
the principles are flexibility, autonomy, ownership over the work that you're completing. Are we offering that to our employees, or are we trying to fit them back into the rigid structures of traditional employment? And I feel like that's what we're seeing right now.
Mhm.
And it will backfire once we come out of this employer market and employees have options again. They won't be hopping. They will be jumping to more alternative work tracts. And so, that's the Web3 blockchain that Deborah is talking about, which is what if my resume was imprinted on the blockchain so that my skills can be verified immediately and AI can match me with not just a company to work with full time, but maybe several companies, several projects that fit my lifestyle. I can work at 8 o'clock at night with a team across seas, or I can work when and how I want. I can change the laundry, go pick up my kids, work part-time if I want. This is the type of environment that we're moving towards.
And John, what's so interesting is just to remind people, the work that we know today is based on Taylorism, which dates back to
Yes.
1911, when an engineer said, you know, people don't have feelings. They're just cogs on a wheel. They're just
Assembly
there.
line, right?
Yeah,
We're way past
exactly.
that.
It worked great for the assembly line, but what's so unfortunate is I still hear continuously about command and control situations, trying to watch you, seeing how many keystrokes you take, seeing how long you're sitting in your chair. We're human. We're not animals. We're not robot. We don't need to be monitored. What we need to be valued on is, at the end of the day, what is the output that we're contributing to the organization? And, now we're in a position where you can have a portfolio career. You don't have to have one job, one manager, one paycheck. We can cobble together not just what we specialize in, but really areas of creativity and passions that we
Yeah.
have. It could be baking cookies or gardening or driving Uber or dog sitting, whatever it is. We now have this opportunity to really cobble many, many different opportunities to provide for a sustainable living.
Yeah, and the command control, the monitoring, when people are, are talking about those sorts of things, or when that's the style, maybe that was effective in previous generations. Though I'll argue that even back then that wasn't the best way. But maybe it was effective back then. But today it's just not effective. And and if people are using those approaches, you're just a bad leader. You don't have trust with your people,
Exactly.
and people do not want to work in those types of environments. Josh, to your point, with your 10, I forget what you said, the 10 principles or the 10 components. Yeah, absolutely, people just don't want to work in that kind of an environment, and so a lot of these back to work mandates, back to office mandates that we see at organizations. Now, there are completely legitimate reasons why a CEO might want workers to come back to the office. And that's fine. It depends on the organization, it depends on the industry, it depends on the type of work that they're doing, and maybe it makes complete sense for workers to come back to the office. But for the most part, when I see these back to office mandates, that's not what's going on. Usually it's command control.
Yeah,
Usually
command
it's
control
monitoring.
or long-term leases that they can't get out of the
Yes.
buildings as
It's
well.
sunk cost fallacy,
Um,
or
yep,
it's command control and we want to monitor you. And it's nuts. It just doesn't make sense in the modern age. And it demonstrates bad leadership. And younger workers in particular aren't going for it. And we've seen this shift. It's been a long time coming. The rise of gig workers and people doing freelance work. It's been growing. That segment of the economy has been growing for a long, long time, and particularly among younger workers. Uh, I only see it continuing that direction, and especially as we have these technologies like blockchain, especially as we have technologies that can connect us even better via distributed teams, uh, freelance work, and such across the world. I don't need to be tied through traditional employment arrangements the same way that maybe I had to be in the past in order to make a living and in order to provide for my family or whatever. And by the way, younger people are opting for different lifestyles that aren't necessarily even consistent with previous generations either. Maybe they don't want a home. Maybe they don't want to get married. Maybe they don't want to have kids.
right.
And so all of these things look different. And if they look different, that means employers need to adapt in the way that they are hiring, in the way that they're structuring work, in the way that they're leading. And if they don't, they're just dinosaurs and they're going to become obsolete and they're going to have a hard time attracting the type of talent they need to be competitive.
We love chasing buzzwords, and the two that come to mind when you're talking there was the Great Stay, which is everyone is staying put at their organization because there are plenty of reasons why. I would, blame the economy, blame the political environment, blame a lot of things. And the Great Detachment that Gallup just posted a new 10-year low of employee engagement within the workplace. So we see that employees are staying at their job, but they are not excited about it. And moreover, 52% of employees are actively looking for a new job in a job market that is the most difficult we've had in the past 5 years. And so when
Yeah.
you add all of that together, it very much points to an employer market that we can kind of throw around some of that control element. Like, we own you, we can tell you to come back to the office. You have to do exactly what we say. But when the pendulum swings the other way, they're going to have more options than ever, and they are not going to hesitate to treat the company exactly how they were treated. And so what we write in our book is simply, how do you prepare for that? We have a roadmap that we help leaders understand. How do you attract Gen Z to your workplace? Those are the operating principles. How can you create an environment where they want to be there, where they do get immediate feedback, where they get to work in ways that bring them some of that fulfillment and satisfaction back to the workplace? And that's where we get the most excited, is that roadmap.
And I think, to add to your point, Josh, there's a lot of unknowns out there. Let's be honest. There's a lot of fear in terms of AI adoption. Soon we're going to recognize that one person can soon do the job of two people, and then three people, and then
Yeah.
four people. So I always tell individuals, you really need, in this environment, you got to think about yourself as an entrepreneur. We are not going to have those steady paychecks of our grandparents' generation. And so it's really critical to be prepared for this as AI and other technologies start to get integrated more and more so in the tech stack, that individuals take it upon themselves also to learn and tinker and play around with generative AI. And depending on, where you fall in product development or what your role is, digital twinning is going to be a
Mhm.
huge component for manufacturing, innovation, productivity moving forward. But at the end of the day, there are no guarantees. So you have to be prepared to really diversify and recognize that, you've got to take care of yourself. and figure out what that looks like moving forward, particularly when a younger generation has already adopted these personalities. We almost are dealing with the inverted, where the current generation of leadership is going to be learning a heck of a lot more from the younger generation than what we've ever seen in the past.
Yeah, and let's not forget, while right now it's an employer's labor market, it was only like a year and a half ago that it was the other way around.
Yeah.
Right? The pendulum swings back and forth. And it wasn't that long ago that employers, organizations could not find people. Workers had all the leverage in the world, and they had all the power. And the reality is, generative AI kind of throws a wrench in some things, and there's a lot of uncertainty, but we still have tons of skill gaps. When we think about, the larger labor forces in the world right now, whether we're talking about STEM, we're talking about healthcare, there's all these different areas where there are huge skill gaps in the labor force, and that hasn't gone away. We still have to wrestle with that, and automation and generative AI that might help us, in terms of productivity to bridge some of it, but we haven't gotten past it. We still are going to have to figure out how to bridge that gap, and so we're not through this. Employees, workers are still going to have leverage and power moving into the future, labor market and the future economy. It's just a matter of pendulum swings. And so, yeah, organizations shouldn't be shooting themselves in the foot, because they're going to have to be wooing these workers back to them in the not too distant future. And if they're burning bridges, it's going to really hurt them.
Yeah, I would argue 10 years ago, sitting in the middle of Silicon Valley here, the coveted degree was the software engineer. Well, that's gone away. So just as fast, although I agree with you, there are skill gaps, AI and even what we're seeing with augmented AI, where machine learning becomes a part of that as well, is going to move so rapidly to fulfill those gaps. And so, it's very tough because universities are going to have to figure out their value. We certainly argue this is a skills-based environment over a college degree. And so there's going to be a lot of disruption moving forward. This is the greatest transformation we've seen since the assembly line or the wheel or fire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Deborah and Josh, I know you need to get going and get on with your busy day. I appreciate you taking the time, sharing a little bit about your book. I'm super excited for its release. Before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your book, and then give us a final word for today.
John.
Yeah, you can find us at the Work3 Institute. It's work3.me. Deborah and I are both highly active on our socials. You can find us on LinkedIn, just typing in our names. Or we'd love for you to take a look at our book. You can find it on Amazon. Again, any book retailer really, but Employment is Dead is the name of the book. It's coming out January 28th, and we're really excited about it.
Deborah and Josh, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about their work, their team, check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.